Buying a home is a significant emotional and financial investment, and that's why it is so important to approach the process carefully to avoid common mistakes. I'm Lauren. This is the one and only Raul.
You too, Ken.
We are with the Schrader Group, and today we are going to be talking about potential pitfalls that homebuyers could have. What would be the first thing a homebuyer would need to start the process?
Well, I think they need to be clear and level-minded, right? Number one, figure out what they want to do. Are they renting? Are they living on their mom's couch? What does that look like? Because I think a lot of people get, tongue-tied when they're talking to lenders or agents. Like, oh, all you need is 3.5% down payment, or you need 5% for conventional, whatever finance you go with. But a lot of people don't know about closing costs and things like that. So I think it's about making sure you're budgeted correctly. And then you got to realize where you're coming from. I mean, some people are coming from California, so like they don't think that they got to pay for moving, or sometimes they got enough for their down payment, but they don't have enough for storage or what happens in the interim before they actually move in. And ultimately, just doing your research and making sure.
Yes, because it all adds up.
Yeah, I mean, nobody wants buyer's remorse, right? So like, you want to make sure you're going to be moving to where you want to be.
Absolutely. And so, what would be some of the deciding factors?
Yeah. So, how much can you afford?
Yeah.
Right. Like, because I mean, if you're in an apartment, okay, let's just say you're paying $2,000 a month. Well, does that mean that you can actually afford $2,000 worth of a house payment? Maybe, maybe not. But you got to remember there's taxes, insurance, and everything else is related to it. Cutting your grass, mowing the yard, all that kind of stuff goes into play. So you want to kind of make sure you're within, realm of where you want to do. But be wise about where you want to be. Are you going to be close to the schools, right? Where your kid's going to go? Where do you work? All those kind of things.
Location.
That's absolutely right. Because, I mean, we found in 2023, it's been tough in certain areas, just depending on where you're at. But at the end of the day, it's just don't make emotional decisions. I think a lot of people, they always say make a decision with your mind, not your heart, because once you're emotionally invested, it's hard to change your mind. And sometimes you start to overlook, oh, well, I can paint it later, or I can do this whenever I get the money, or my income tax comes back, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. The truth is nobody ever gets around to doing it. So a lot of times, once they get to the point where they recall us in 3 or 4 years, it's like, well, they haven't done anything to the house from the beginning. And then now we're kind of upside down, if you will. Right.
And you mentioned cost. So can you explain why it's so important to get pre-approved before?
So I think that's the biggest decision. There's a lot of great lenders out there and a lot of great real estate agents out there. And the reason it's important to get pre-approved is because before you even get into the negotiations of what you're going to be paying, how much down payment, how much closing costs, how much you're going to pay for the house, how much repair you're going to do, you got to figure out what you can afford.
Right.
And when I say afford, I mean, we don't want, they say, be, house poor, I mean, that doesn't make any sense, right? You're trying to, benefit your family, your lives, leave a legacy to your kids or whatnot. So you don't want to take away all your livelihood.
Right.
If you still enjoy going to the park and, going to the movies here and there, great, right? Budget that into your monthly, because if you're pre-approved for, let's just say $250,000, you don't want to be looking at something at $275,000 or $280,000.
You fall in love with it,
because then you're gonna set your expectations a little bit out of the realm, and then you're gonna convince yourself that you can afford that payment.
Right.
And maybe you can, right? But
you're gonna start things around.
Well, yeah, you're gonna say we're not gonna go eat anymore. We're not gonna go do this. We're not gonna do all these other things. But at the end of the day, you kind of go back into that realm, and then you realize that now money's a little bit tighter than what it was.
Right.
And then all of a sudden your utility bills start to go up, or this happens, and you have a pipe break.
Emergencies happen.
Yeah, there's all kinds of different things. So you definitely want to be comfortable within your budget and make sure that you can forecast that 2 or 3 years and just see where you're at.
And I feel like people take you more seriously too when you get pre-approved, other than just like walking into a new construction home, for look-sees.
100%, because I mean, our eyes are always bigger than our budgets, right? And that's just kind of the way it's always been for so long. And most people will see a sign that says, oh, you could be in this house for $1,500. Well, it's not going to include taxes or insurance, right?
They'll trick you.
No, I don't want to call it tricky, because technically your principal and interest is probably right. But you get there and then you try to figure out what you can and can't afford. And I think that's kind of the pitfall of not knowing ahead of time what you can afford, because once you know what you can afford, then you could kind of zone in. Is it going to be pre-existing? Is it going to be on this side of town? Is it going to be on whatever other area you want to be at? But at least you could kind of navigate through the process to see what you can afford for your family.
And what are your thoughts on getting an inspection done?
Well, number one, regardless if you're paying cash or buying with some type of financing, must get an inspection. I don't say must because, well, the lender's going to require it on most loans, but it's a must because agents are great, and I could go through a house and I could pick up all the big ticket items, and I could kind of narrow down whether it's a bust or not initially. But I'm not going to go in your attic initially. I'm not going to go on the roof typically. That's what the inspectors are for. They're supposed to break it down and kind of give you an idea of what's going on. Now, I can tell you if there's foundation. I can tell you what to be aware of. Your big items, your foundation, your structural, your HVAC, electrical, plumbing. I mean, those are all your big ticket items. I can tell you what that looks like. But we want to make sure that, someone's opening things, checking the plugs, making sure that there's no hots or anything that's maybe... I mean, have you ever been in a house where the light never turns off? I mean, there's a problem there, right? Because it's not supposed to be that way. There should be an on and off receptacle. But at the end of the day, it's just making sure that you're buying an investment. I mean, you wouldn't buy a car without looking it through, making sure there's no dents, making sure you do a test drive. I mean, it's the same process. You're basically getting that extra round of due diligence to make sure that you're making a sound decision.
Absolutely. Now, I've also heard of deals, kind of breaking off because people go and they spend a ton of money, on buying a car, or, they go and buy some furniture for the new house, and then, they no longer qualify. So...
Yeah, so that's a great point. So when we were talking about affordability, a lot of times we're right on that cusp of what we need to do to qualify. So sometimes it's based off of credit, right, or credit scores. So let's just say you're at a 650, you're borderline on whatever loan program you're on, then you go take out extra credit. Well, now it dings you to like a 638 or 640. Well, now you might not be in line because now you might be paying a little bit more interest because you bumped out into another tier, which might offset your debt to income ratio, which might cut you out of the deal. Or you go and get a motorcycle or a vehicle, or you go on a shopping spree.
I have a story.
Right.
So this is a true story of there was this couple that was buying a home, and they hadn't closed yet, but I guess he decided he wanted to propose in the house before they closed. So he went and bought a wedding ring and proposed. I think she said yes, but then they no longer qualified for the home.
Oh my goodness.
But people just don't know. Like, that's why it's so important to educate. You don't go make,
Yeah, so a lot of people think that once they get pre-qualified, it's over and everything's already set in stone, and it's not. And that's the craziest part of this whole business is, I mean, you can do a lot of different things. I mean, you can refinance some things, make it better on your payment, pay off things, make it better for your debt to income ratios. But then you can open up. The biggest one we get is we took out furniture, or we got refrigerators on the way, or XYZ. Well, that just bumped them out of qualifications, and then we've also had people miss a payment within the last realm because they thought, well, when we buy the new house, we'll just pay off the old one, and they don't make that payment, and now it dings them, now they don't qualify because they got a late pay.
Right. So I know we touched a little bit on location, but I want to dive deeper a little bit into why is it so important for location? Obviously the schools are a big one, and maybe work or.
Yeah, no, it's great. So location obviously has been the number one thing in real estate from day one. A lot of that has to do with your strategy, what you're trying to do. I mean, if you're moving to San Antonio and you're just trying to, let's just say you're PCS in here, you're in the military, no family, you just, got a place here, you want to get a place, maybe a future rental. Well, you want to be close to a military base, right? Or you want to be close to somewhere that's going to actually benefit you when you make your next move. You want to be close to good schools, restaurants, entertainment. I mean, that's that kind of the big things, hospitals.
Right.
And then it's a matter of, okay, well, maybe schools, right? Maybe you got a starting family or a young family, then you want to be close to schools. What we found in PCSing is a lot of military families like to come out here, but one person's deployed a lot, so they want to make sure that the spouse, whoever it might be, has accessibility to parks, neighborhoods, convenience, gatherings, community.
Right.
Because if those support systems, if those support systems aren't there, it's really, really hard. And then if you really look at resale value and what ends up turning when you're really trying to, maximize on your equity, all those key features come into play because they allow, accessibility to the airport, highways, things like that, HEBs in San Antonio.
You got really happy when you said HEB.
I love me some HEB, yeah.
Got really excited. And so would it be so important to hire a real estate agent to represent you?
Yeah, so I could tell you this. I mean, there's 16,000 agents in San Antonio or Metro. And a lot of them, have been doing this for a long, long time. But then a lot of them, just, during COVID, maybe picked up their license and maybe didn't give it the full run. It's important to get someone that's qualified and has the reputation, the reviews, and the experience, because you're trusting me with $500,000, $300,000.
Yeah.
You could buy a house anywhere in San Antonio for $300,000. But if you're getting pushed one way or another, maybe you can't sell and get your $300,000 back in a year, or 2 years, or 5 years. Right? Like, that doesn't make sense. When we talk about equity and maximization, it's always best to get with someone, a trusted lender, trusted real estate professional. But you always want to be in something, because look, even if you were a lawyer, you wouldn't represent yourself. You'd have somebody else represent your best interest, because your emotional heart is intact, right?
Correct. Yes,
you're going to say, oh, I'm going to get upset on this, or I'm going to get, sad on that. Let somebody else take you out of that field and say, this is what's best for you and your family. And I think at the end of the day, it's about leaving that legacy and trying to make sure you maximize on all points as possible. But, in addition to that, I think there's a lot of contracts, amendments, a lot of things that go into it. What is the option period, the due diligence period, to where you can actually go through the house, do that inspection like we were talking about earlier. But just know what your rights are and what your ins and outs are. What is your exposure, at the end of the day? Because, we're not playing with, monopoly money. It's expensive.
Right.
1% earnest money could be $3,000 to $5,000. And it's a lot of money. And our job as professionals is to protect our clients and make sure that we have their best interests at heart all the time.
Yes. Hopefully we have touched on all the big common mistakes that home buyers could potentially make when looking to buying their home. I'm Lauren. This is Raul. And please reach out if you have any questions or subscribe to our channel.
Absolutely. Y'all have a blessed day, and we'll talk to you soon.